This is ayah 31 from Surah Al-Muddathir, and it is written like this in the Medina mushaf. Now, notice how Sheikh Al-Husary recites this ayah, and notice where he stops.
وما جعلنا أصحاب النار إلا ملائكة وما جعلنا عدتهم إلا فتنة
So he clearly stops at la, a no stopping symbol, and then he continues from afterward. And he's not the only one to do this. If you listen to the recitation of Sheikh Maher Al-Muaiqly as an example, you will also see that he recites exactly in the same way. He stops at malaika, imana, and wal-mu'minun. So he basically stopped at every last symbol in this ayah, and not only that, he continued reciting from after that symbol. So are these really mistakes? Should we follow these recitations, or what should we do? Well, first of all, these recitations are 100% correct, and you can 100% follow them and imitate them. But then, how? Aren't we supposed to not stop here, and if we did, not to restart from directly afterward? Well, let me tell you, if you open enough mushafs, you will see more than just what you see here. In some other mushafs, this position here is actually waqf jaiz. In others, it is a possible pause. And here's a third mushaf giving rukhsa in the same position. But wait a minute, how is this possible? And which one should we follow if one says stop and the other says don't stop? Well, it is important to note that this is not the only example where this happens in the Quran. There are many other similar instances of differences in stopping symbols. But is that really a problem? To answer this question, we should learn a little bit about Ilm Al-Waqf wal-Ibtida, which is a separate branch of knowledge of the Quran focusing on determining the positions where you may or may not stop when reciting the Quran. It is, simply put, a set of instructions on managing stopping and pauses when reciting. And it is done on the basis of tafsir, grammar, balagha, and other elements that determine the hukm for each ayah. Whether it is better to continue, better to stop, forbidden stop, and obligatory stop, and so on. Now, the question at hand here is, if these are indeed instructions on how to recite, why do they contradict one another? One that says, don't stop, and another that says, stop. And the answer is, since each of these elements that we refer to is not absolute in itself, or in other words, there are many schools of tafsir, schools of grammar, balagha, different opinions on the i'rab, and since these differences are there, the result will also be different to an extent, of course. And so, when a scholar from a certain school of grammar, school of tafsir, and balagha, gives instructions on waqf and ibtida, it then reflects his ijtihadat, which are based on them. For example, this ayah in question here, the scholar who favors focusing on semantics and the tafsir of the ayah, like Al-Imam Ad-Dani, for example, who reported in his book that this ayah only contains 4 pausing possibilities and nowhere else. And therefore, based on his opinion, you cannot pause elsewhere since the whole meaning has not actually been completed yet. And so, we then see the la symbol placed in areas where you think you can pause while you shouldn't, according to his opinion. And therefore, we have that version, and that is one opinion. Another opinion focuses on the syntactic or grammatical structure of the ayah. And so, based on that opinion, right here is indeed a complete sentence, grammatically. So there is no reason that prevents you from pausing here and then continuing from afterward. And so we have the waqf jaiz with the jim symbol in this position. A third opinion tries to balance between the two, says that while it is possible to stop here grammatically, it is better to keep going to complete the meaning of the ayah. And so we have mushafs that with the symbol of sili, instructing you to better keep going, but it is fine to pause. And just like that, depending on the sources and the angle you're considering, it can give you different symbols for the exact same ayah, and following any of them is of course fine. And therefore, what Sheikh Al-Husary and Sheikh Al-Muaiqly recited is 100% correct according to one of the schools. But now some might think, well, if these are just opinions and ijtihadat, then I can just recite however I want, pause wherever I want, right? Well, no, not really. While it is indeed true that you are not committing a sin if you ignored the stopping symbols, since they are not part of the wahi or the revelation, if you did ignore them and it caused a change in the meaning of the ayah, then you have made a mistake. For example, in this ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah, can we recite it without stopping at either of these symbols, so by completely ignoring the stopping symbols here? Well, the answer is yes. It is possible to recite without stopping anywhere here, since it doesn't change the meaning whatsoever. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. There is no problem here, but what is better is indeed to stop at either to show the meaning properly. But this is not the case in every situation. In some cases, this can cause severe changes, like in this ayah. If you decided to ignore the stopping symbol and linked it to the following word or stopped at the word al-mauta instead, you have essentially made a mistake that changed the meaning completely and turned it into a meaning that was not intended. And so, in this case, choosing to recite like this out of carelessness or laziness is a sin, and making this mistake deliberately and knowingly while wanting to corrupt the meaning of the ayah puts you in a far worse situation than the sin. Obviously, if this mistake was done without knowledge or while you're still learning, it cannot be considered a sin and it is forgiven, inshallah. Therefore, the sensible thing to do here, especially if you don't fully understand the ayat in Arabic yet, is to just follow the stopping symbols as much as you can in your mushaf. And if the stopping symbol happened to be too far, then use the proper resuming techniques which I explained in detail in this lesson. Or you could apply the techniques I mentioned in this lesson to improve your lung capacity to make it through any longer ayah, inshallah. Thanks for watching. If you want to start learning the tajweed, then start with this playlist. And also, don't forget to check my latest book about tajweed and download the companion app. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.